we have the right to inhabit our land, to use our land.
Our culture is about sustaining that relationship with the plants, the animals, in a forest.
I did start drawing a lot in the residential school, really not knowing my culture and traditions.
And I'm very proud to be here today. My name is Halos, and this is my squia.
Welcome again to Voices of Shishalh. Excuse me, Chief. I've been practicing for the whole Christmas. It's now 2015. Let me try it again. Shishalh.
Getting better.
Today's a very special show for this reason. We had asked and were granted, the Chief and the crew, an opportunity to spend some time with probably the most popular and dynamic political figure in this country today, and that is Justin Trudeau. And he was gracious, and I think it's fair to say that in his remarks, as you're about to see in the interview with our chief, he was candid and forthright. And I believe I can say that you will have been, again, a history maker and a pioneer, because I don't recall him sitting down with any other chief anywhere in the country who has his own political talk show. So once again, you're a first in this, and I thought your questions were extraordinary. Going in, what were you hoping to achieve out of the interview with Justin Trudeau?
Well, a little bit of consistency from the Liberal Party. Going back 30 years, with his dad, we had worked with the Liberal Party and developing the land, developing our people, and this was composed by the Liberal Party many, many years ago by some older chiefs. And having him say that he'd be willing to look at that and consider that, and he knows and understands Shishalh self-government. He knows and understands where we're coming from, and I think in turn he does understand where we're coming from, and he understands where we're going with this. So we're hopeful that they will be consistent in terms of assisting our development.
So I think, if anything, Chief, one of your incredible strengths, for those of us who know you, is your ability to be able to intuit and to appreciate what's hidden beneath the words. So do you believe that he will honor those promises given to you many years ago by prime ministers like Chrétien and Paul Martin?
In the Native communities, there's a change of thinking, and I think that the federal government has to be in tune with that, because the nations are emerging. There is going to be a reconciliation throughout the nation, and it would be very courageous for him and very diligent for him to follow that suit.
It was an interview that was held in the Fairmont Pacific Rim Hotel downtown. We were given 15 minutes. We took full advantage of it. Let's join that interview now between Chief Calvin Cragen and the Liberal leader, Justin Trudeau.
Well, thank you, Justin, for being on my show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Colin.
Yeah. I just have to give you a little bit of history. We're from a little village just 30 miles from here. And Shishalh and the Shishalh Nation, as you probably are aware, are the first self-governing band in Canada. We fought long and hard to get to where we are. And it's been over, almost 40 years. I was a very young chief then, and as a matter of fact, I got to meet your dad, John Chrétien, John Basford, many Liberals. Our village was a staunch Liberal nation, mainly because we were very progressive. We wanted to move ahead. We wanted to get out of the Indian Act. We had visionary plans that the chiefs had. And the last time we met with Chrétien, he gave us some advice. He said, develop your people and develop your land.
Yeah.
And we did that. So now we're poised and ready to take the final step. And we're very happy that the Liberal government is going to return. We see a lot of you young natives who want to be part of it. And I think there's a whole new attitude about that in British Columbia and part of Alberta, I think, in the north, that we see partnerships being developed, relationships, and I think we want to pursue that. We have been promoting and lobbying with local governments, if not provincial governments, to use Shishalh, because we're poised and ready. Use Shishalh to cross the line, to similar to other nations who have first government. We think in BC, an opportunity to use Shishalh and that. And I don't know what your format is for First Nations and what's happening, but I'd like to get your impression of what you see for us in the future.
Well, I mean, first of all, you talk about it well. There's a momentum coming from First Nations communities to looking towards the future and being excited about the kind of potential partnerships that are going to grow not just our communities, but our country as a place where there are opportunities for everyone, and there is an inherent respect for the extraordinary land that we share. Now, the fact is, for a few years now, we've had a federal government that hasn't been a willing partner, hasn't been willing to step up and sit down with First Nations across the country. And you talk about the momentum out west, but you hear it and you see it right across the country where people want to start moving forward. And unfortunately, we have a government that is choosing to look at the relationship with First Nations as antagonism rather than cooperation. And that's where I'm really excited about all the different First Nations leaders and Métis Nation and Inuit leaders coming forward to step up and join the Liberal team, because we need to have a government that is fundamentally different in its outlook in terms of engaging positively with the great opportunities and the need for a basic respect towards First Nations that hasn't been there for too long.
Yeah, speaking of respect, we did invite the Prime Minister to the show to be our very first, and never got a reaction from him. And when I was surprised that we were able to convince you to come on the show, I said, well, he's got to be the man.
Well, it didn't take a lot of convincing. I've been incredibly privileged to have sat down with chiefs, but also band members and young people across the country. A couple of summers ago, I spent a great time up on the Haida Nation doing a little fly fishing and talking about their model there. And I know the Shishalh model has been around for a while, but since 1999, there hasn't been any forward movement on finalizing the deals and the agreements, and I think it's time. I think it's time we really started moving forward all together and going to the spirit of the Royal Proclamation, which talked about shared partnership, respect, stewardship, and understanding that as we move forward, we need to do so together. Yeah,
for sure. You know, the government that's in power now did a feeble attempt with the Accords, but we think there should be something more substantial. And I think the Liberal government are the people that can do it. We have a great relationship. I think your mom came up to our village one day and bought some fish. And my wife always remembers that. We've had very important people come up to Shishalh. We live in a beautiful, beautiful place. And we hope that you will come up to visit us.
I look forward to it.
Our people are very excited about this. They just don't believe it. Yeah, so we're going to extend to you a formal invitation to come up to our longhouse, and many people have come, and we're hoping that you'll be able to come before the end of January. I hope next time you're in Vancouver.
It would be an honor, but I don't think I'm going to make it before the end of January. This coming year is going to be a very, very busy one, and I'm all across the country non-stop. But I do look forward to coming and sitting down in your longhouse in the coming years, perhaps as Prime Minister.
That'd be so great. If that was the first place you could come to when you're Prime Minister, that'd be such an honor. But, you know, the Shishalh Band and the Shishalh Nation are battling at many fronts, at many levels. On Wednesday, I got to go back and meet with the ministers about coal transport, different things like that are infringing into our territory. And what we have now is a community that is fighting with the First Nation. And I think that's a major change, major attitudes toward local governments, local communities sticking together to either make the changes that need to happen to protect our territory. We're looking at developing sustainably with the local governments, the local proponents. We're developing a government, and we think that now is the time it's going to be a new era, and I think we're looking really forward to a Liberal government really making a big change for us.
Well, the kind of leadership we need is the kind that is collaborative, that understands that projects of any size don't get built unless there's social license, unless there's a long-term accountability and responsible scientific and environmental oversight, and unless there is a real sense of partnership and collaboration with the communities affected, particularly Indigenous communities. And that, for me, is the only way to go forward. Because even when there's this antagonism and governments are imposing solutions, that means it's just going to get bogged down in the courts, which isn't efficient, which isn't good for anyone, which is very expensive. We need to make sure that we're building up front prior informed free consent, as they say in the UN Declaration on Indigenous Rights. I mean, this is the only way to move forward, and we're seeing actually right across the country, the non-Aboriginal peoples saying, you know what? Canadian citizens demanding that we have a better relationship, and that's something that I am deeply committed to, because not just because of an ethical or a moral responsibility to do right by the First Peoples, but because the path forward to prosperity on this land comes from collaboration, respect, and working together.
Yep, and I think that happens, there's going to be a great future for the communities. A long-term future.
I certainly believe so.
I promised the chiefs from the Site C Dam area that I would bring it up with you, and we're going to be joining forces with them to oppose that. We are proposing different alternatives to Premier Bennett, or Minister Bennett, about hydro proponents rather than Site C Dam. I think they could be more useful, working out cooperative measures with local nations and developing alternative energies, clean energies, and we're really promoting that. We're not opposing the movement, but I think Site C Dam would cost the taxpayers billions and billions of dollars that would just go to waste.
Well, I mean, the fact is, on any project like that, whether it's a pipeline or whether it's a dam, we need a level of social license. I mean, governments need to understand that even though governments grant permits, ultimately only communities grant permission, and the kinds of responsible stepping up that you're talking about, of talking about alternatives, looking at the scientific and the traditional knowledge that means that maybe there are different alternatives, is exactly the kind of conversations that a responsible democratic society should have to figure out the best path forward, not just for right now, but for future generations as well.
Yep, I think with those words, there will be a greater good for the entire country of BC, and we want to welcome you to BC. And I know you're going to do great work.
It's always a pleasure to be here. This is a second home for me, and the amount of years I've spent growing up and living out here is something that's really important to me, and I carry you with me wherever I go across the country.
Great to have you back.
Such a pleasure, Colin.
Welcome back to Voices of Shishalh. And when I look back on that interview that you conducted with Justin Trudeau, I think there were some very salient points, not the least of which is, I thought he told you, and I thought I heard, and everybody else in the room, that he feels that of all the leaders on the political scene federally, he maybe has the greatest legacy of being in the position to understand and to assist your agenda and First Nations agenda. I mean, he said it. Did you feel, was that political rhetoric, or is that who he is?
I think just by having him come onto the show speaks to his sincerity to follow up and to assist our endeavors. And I truly believe that he is a man of his word, and I'm hoping that one day, if he becomes a leader, that he will come to our community to follow through on the promises that former Liberals had made over 30 years ago.
When I was saying goodbye to him, he put a secret question to me, which he said, when you do this part of the show, will you ask Chief this question? So I will ask it. And I know you haven't heard it before, but here it is. He wanted to know, If you were able to achieve all of your territories that are yours historically, traditionally, they all now come under your aegis, your government. Will you stop the fight? Will that be the end? Or will you continue to fight for other things?
I think the struggle will probably continue as we try to reconcile the damages that have been done in the past. That's going to take generations in terms of bringing back our culture, replacing the culture, developing our language, developing other parts of our land. The way it was done, if you can imagine that we were never interfered with by other nations, by the Europeans, where our people would be today. That's what we've got to bring back. That's what we've got to reconcile and promote that with our younger people, if not promote it with all of our people.
So the struggle will continue beyond the land, through the land.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent answer. An excellent interview. I've enjoyed this show probably more than all of them that we've done. When we come back, we're going to talk to Cultural Director Candice Campo. She's got juicy, red-hot news, and, and I want to hear what it is. So, Chief, we'll welcome her after the break. This is Voices of Shishalh.
Hi, this is Justin Trudeau, and you're watching Voices of Shishalh.
Always a welcome guest, Cultural Director Candice Campo. I'm glad you're on the show. This is your first appearance in 2015, and you're just chock full with all kinds of good things on culture. So tell us what you got planned for the first quarter of the year.
So we're really busy this year. We have a lot of community events planned and community workshops, not just for the Shishalh community members, but for our Sunshine Coast residents as a whole. But first of all, we're planning a Longhouse celebration on January 29th on a Thursday evening, and we're inviting all of the Sunshine Coast to come join us for a potluck and fundraiser. We have a lot of great activities planned, storytelling, drumming, singing, and dancing. It's going to be a lot of fun.
What's going on at the museum now? What's about to happen there?
Right now, our staff are working diligently to plan for 2 major exhibits in the 2015 year, and our first exhibit will be displayed in May, and it's going to be on residential school and resiliency. And then shortly after that, we're doing another exhibit in September called Rediscovery, which is basically the return to the land, the outdoor education that our people have been engaging in, and our goals and aspirations for our younger generations to know their land and their history.
So if I come into the museum for the reconciliation and the residential school, what are the elements of that presentation? What will we be seeing and hearing?
So it's the goal of our people and our leadership to build a relationship with our neighbors, and in building that relationship, it's our aspiration to have our fellow neighbors understand the residential school experience and not only the impacts but the efforts and the resiliency of our people to move past that history.
And we've also got, I think, a monumental change in name coming up of the local hospital. What can you tell me about that? That's huge.
That's right. Our leadership have been in discussion with the leaders of the hospital and Vancouver Coastal Health, and in celebration of that shared history of building the Longhouse as well as our people donating the land, the change in the name is going to be Shishalh Hospital or Shishalh Hospital, but it's very important to the Shishalh people that we pay homage and we really recognize the people that have served the hospital, in particular the St. Mary's Auxiliary. So our people want to hold up and honor the auxiliary for the decades of amazing work they have did in serving the Sunshine Coast.
Now, coming up in March is going to be your first annual General Assembly, which is basically a coming together of all of the people to hear what went on last year, what's coming forth. and a general sense, but I understand that you're going to put a real new, fresh stamp on this AGA, using your role as cultural director to bring some real new light to what has sometimes been a bit of a dusty evening. So tell me what you got planned.
That's right. Basically, we have a lot of departments in our organization that are moving really fast. Our rights and title, our social development and education, and culture just wants to support their work and their efforts because they're going to share the goals and the strategies with the community, and we want to do a depiction through theater, through a short play to highlight, you know, our people's history, our creation, our more recent history with contact with settlers and where we are today, and we're just switching it up a little. We're going to make that AGA fun, and we're going to just share a bit of culture and history through theater.
So Broadway comes to the Sunshine Coast.
There you go, yes.
Well, that's a very ambitious program. I mean, if you're starting out in the first quarter doing all that, this is going to be an incredible year, and you'll come back every show and tell us how you're going. If people want to get a hold of you, someone in the community has an idea or something that maybe could tie into what your endeavors are you available, phone calls, emails?
We are available. Our number is 604-885-6012 at the Tim Sweah Museum and Cultural Center, or you can contact myself directly as the director, and my number is 604-341-7555, or through email.
Perfect. The always wonderful Candice Campo, cultural director of the, I'm going to try it here, Shishalh Nation. I'll get it right by the end of this show.
You're doing good, Michael.
And we're looking forward to what she does, because the new face of the nation is one of a kind of a spiritual sharing. Would you not agree? This is a very extraordinary time in this nation, whereas the walls are down, the story's out, the people are open and welcome, and you're leading that. And I think that's an extraordinary leadership role you've taken on.
Thank you.
We closed the show with one of our favorite segments, and it was actually, again, Candice who gave us the idea. We're going to learn the language. The language, Candice, my last question is, it's a longer version of Shishalh. When you're speaking the language is?
Shishalh, the Shishalh language.
And on that note, we're going to have a lesson coming right up.
Good morning, my name is Sweah, and it means 4 nations, 4 directions, 4 lands, 4 rivers, 4 mountains, 4 elements. I would like to share with all of you today words from Shishalh, Olnom Shalab. Salmon is Shishalh. The salmon is very important for our people because what they do is put it in a smokehouse and smoke it for 3 weeks, and they put it away for the winter. It's our winter supply. The word for salmon is Shishalh and means salmon. Os. The word for seal is os, and the seal has got a lot of fat, and also when cooked, our people used to bury it into the ground with the rocks and put seaweed on top. And that's how they cook it for hours, and it's really tender. And our people used to eat it. Today we don't. Os. The word for seal is os. Olnom Shalap Suktan Squaw. I'm saying thank you very much. We'll see you next week.
We have the right to inhabit our land, to use our land.
Our culture is about sustaining that relationship with the plants, the animals, in a forest.
I did start drawing a lot in the residential school, really not knowing my culture and tradition.
And I'm very proud to be here today. My name is Halos, And this is my squeal.